Happiest period of my life. Besides having my own son who's in the army, we have approximately 200 chayalim that are connected to Lev Hatorah in the army, between the active soldiers, which there are over 30 of them, and the rebbeim, which there are 5 of them, and Kolel, which about 8 or 9 of them, and dozens and dozens of alumni, plus children of rebbeim that are in the army. It's very, very, very heavy time and a very difficult time for Am Yisrael. At the same time, it's very inspirational.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Be'in podcast. Today, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Rav Boaz Mori, the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshivat Lev Hatorah. Now, I never met Rav Boaz before today and heard a lot of amazing things about him, and I've also seen what he's done in front of my own eyes with building up Yeshivat Lev Hatorah and building up the community of Ramat Shiloh around the area. We touched on so many amazing topics over the course of about an hour, and I'm super excited for you guys to hear our conversation. So without further ado, it's time to jump right into my conversation with Rav Boaz Mori. Welcome to the Israel Gap Year Be'in podcast. I'm your host, Avi Proctor, and in each episode, we get Be'in in depth into the remarkable lives of individuals in Israel who dedicate themselves to inspiring the next generation of Klal Yisrael. Welcome, Rav Boaz. I like to start off every single episode with just a little bit of Hakar Satov. I know running a yeshiva, having a family, and doing all the things that you do, you're a very busy person by nature, and Baruch Hashem, we're able to find time today to sit down in the morning and have this conversation. So just really a big thank you, Yasher Koach, for joining me right now.
Thank you, and thank you for opening up your home.
Amazing. So there's a lot on this piece of paper that I want to touch on over the next hour or so. But really the main thing that I at least want to know is, how did we get here right now? I see you after being in Chinuch for so many different years, and I've seen different shiurim that you've given. I'm speaking with different rabbanim that you've interacted with over the years, and you have a very incredible story of how you got to who you are today. So just if you could give me a little bit of an idea of where you grew up and essentially how you got to here today.
Okay, wow, long story. I was born in and bred in Bayside, Queens, New York. I did not grow up in a frum family, but a very connected family. My mother, LaChayal, was a really, truly religious person, not necessarily the most observant. She did not grow up in an observant home, but she made sure that we all had yeshiva education. She was very inspired and wanted us to be inspired, to be connected to Torah, to the inspiration of Torah, and to inspire other people. We were very much raised with a very values-based education. My mother believed in us and all of us, in every single person, Jew, non-Jew. She was very non-judgmental, and she told us that anything we wanted to do in life we could do, and we actually believed her. So through grade school, North Shore Hebrew Academy, I went to Hank for high school. My year in Israel was in BMT, and I was very, very inspired. That was in 86, 87.
Now Shraga, right?
Not Shraga. Now it's Shraga.
Now
it's
Shraga,
the same campus, yeah. And BMT was an awakening for me. I became frum in high school, sort of self-frum. I kept Shabbos. I was learning on my own. I had wonderful rebbeim who really inspired me. But then the year in Israel is what really sealed the deal, as they say, for me. It was an amazing thing. It was the first time in my life I ever had daven Mariv. It was, and it's funny because I went through the school system. I was a Hebrew valedictorian at Hank without ever having daven Mariv. So it was like a very interesting thing. I came to Israel and I was very inspired, and I just soaked it all up. I had wanted to stay at Shana Bet, but my parents, Shana Aleph was already a stretch. Went to YU, and then I decided I was going to go into Chinuch. I spent many summers at Camp Moshava, and there I had a passion for informal education, and my time in Yeshiva gave me a passion for the formal education. So together, already in my mind, that's where Lev Hatorah was created. I had this discovery, this like epiphany, a number of years ago. I was working at the time in Camp Ennismore as the rabbi of the camp. Camp Ennismore is Moshava in Canada. And it was amazing. They were celebrating 60 years at Camp Moshava there, and at the same time in IO, which is Moshava for the more New Yorkers, so they were celebrating 50 years of IO. And I had worked for many years at IO, and I said, oh my gosh, it was my 50th birthday that summer, and I said, my gosh, the two places that probably influenced me the most in terms of creating Lev Hatorah were BMT and Mosheva. So Mosheva was celebrating 50 years. I was celebrating 50 years, and BMT also was started. It was the first American program started in the summer of '69, and I was born in the summer of '69. So all of these came together. So it was like, wow, the year that I was born was the year that BMT and Mosheva were born, and these were two tremendous influences on me, on my educational approach and my hashkafic internal calibration. So it was very, very, very much those two institutions that really were amazing. And the truth is that I worked at BMT. I came back and I was Grus for 3 years. I think I was the first person ever to get a YU smicha without ever being in YU for smicha. I was in YU for undergrad, and I was a madrich for 3 years. And then I got offered, Rav David Miller, who's my Rebbe, offered me to be a Rebbe at BMT. Now this was like my goal in life, my dream in life. You all know, like the yeshiva that you went to, that's like, wow. So you could be a Rebbe in the same place. That was my goal. So I said to him, Rebbe, you're my Rebbe. What should I do? At the time, he was the Rosh Yeshiva of BMT and the Rosh Kol El. So he said, if you're asking me, I don't think you should take it. So I said, why? So he said, I think you should learn a few more years. So I said, okay. So that's what I did. So I learned for a year in the Meretz Kollel in Mivaseret, the Israeli Kollel there, and then 2 years at Gush. And then afterwards, I took the job at BMT, and I became Rebbe at BMT, and I was there for 4 years. That was my goal. I was the Av Bayit there. I was a night Rebbe. Then I became a morning Rebbe. I was in charge of all the programming, and I saw slowly that the BMT was getting less and less students, and it was going to close. So after Rav Miller was already not the Rosh Yeshiva anymore, and so I spoke to Rav Miller, and I had this idea of creating a new yeshiva. And a lot of it was similar to the rudiments, the building blocks of BMT, and some different. From my experiences in Shalovim, I was there for a year as well, in Gush, in Mavaseret, at BMT, I tried to put together the best elements of all places and create an institution which was focused on the Talmud, on his personal growth, an institution that would instill them with a love for Klal Yisrael and a dedication, commitment to Klal Yisrael and to Eretz Yisrael. One that Talmud Torah would be the center of everything, and that living Torah-centric life was central to Jewish life, but imbued with the most complete fulfillment of Torah, and that is one where a commitment to Klal Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael is one that's in the forefront. So that's how the idea of Lev Hatorah was born, and the year that we opened up, which was 2002, was the first year that BMT didn't open up. So in a certain extent, we were a continuation of BMT in that way.
So on the topic of starting Lev Hatorah and when you guys began in 2002, the idea of called an American Hesder type yeshiva, of what you guys have been able to turn yourselves into, was not something that I guess was so common before I guess Lev Hatorah came to be, and I know there was a lot that went into making the actual yeshiva. So take me through that process a little bit of what was that like when you started the yeshiva. I remember I saw a video online with one of your fellow rabbanim. I forgot who the name was, and he was saying in the process when you were building the yeshiva that you didn't have a building, you didn't have a dormitory, and you're like, we're just going to start this. So take me a little through that process, and I'm very curious to hear what you have to say.
So the idea was never in the beginning to become a Yeshivat Hesder. It was never that. Of course, the hashkaf of what a Yeshivat Hesder represents, so that was something that was always true from Lev Hatorah from day one, but it wasn't ripe back then. Like, we're in a totally different stage of history right now than we were 22 years ago when we started. Back then, we wanted to make an inspiring American program, We opened up in Ramat Beit Shemesh, where all the Rebbeim were living. We wanted the model that all the Rebbeim would live right next to the yeshiva, and it was a great model. It worked successfully, amazingly. We had every year 1 or 2 guys doing the army in the early years of Lev Hatorah, but it wasn't something that was pushed. It wasn't a program that was created that would help them through the process. Not at all. Rav Dudi Winkler, he joined the yeshiva, he runs Lev LaChayal today. He joined, I think, year 3 or year 4, and he was a part-time Rebbe in the very beginning. Only after he came back from Shlichut to Australia for 3 years did he come back, and did we start Lev LaChayal, and that was 10 years ago. We're celebrating 10 years now. So we had more and more guys that were doing the army, and that was an ideological, move on their part, that they wanted to be living in Eretz Yisrael. And it wasn't the Rambo approach. It wasn't like we want to serve in the army, give me our gun. No, it was an approach that we felt a responsibility to be part of Klal Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael. So that's what people would do. They would come to Eretz Yisrael, they would come to learn in yeshiva, and a number of them every year would stay. When we saw that there were more and more guys staying, in Eretz Yisrael and doing the army, we said, let's make a program for them. Because honestly, the army is not a very easy place to maintain your level of religiosity. And the guys would be going into regular units, and it was hard, it was difficult. And many of them, you saw the effect that the army had on their religiosity. So we said, we'll build a program. We'll build a program where the guys would come home for Shabbos to the yeshiva. We would be with them every step of the way. And they would be successful in their Judaism, even while serving the Jewish people in the army. That also was tricky, because the beginning years of Lev LaChayal, it wasn't a Yeshivat Hesder. You can't just snap your fingers and become a Yeshivat Hesder. So we were almost more like a mechina, and guys would go either to the regular units, or they would go to the Nachal Haredi, Netzach Yehuda. And in the regular units, it was culturally not so great, because guys there, they were cursing, they were smoking, it wasn't exactly the best environment. And in Nachal Haredi, it wasn't also the best environment, because guys there were cursing and smoking, and it was a very similar experience, except the guys were coming, from more religious homes. But our guys were the frum guys in the units at the time. Nachal Netzach Yehuda wasn't as advanced as it is today. So we applied to become Yeshivat Hesder. And after 2 years, Rav Drukman, we went to him, he came to us, Rav Drukman Lev Shalom, he approved us to be Yeshivat Hesder, the first American Yeshivat Hesder, as part of the Igud Yeshivot Hesder. There's an Igud with over 70 Yeshivot Hesder that we're a part of. And it was really a game changer. The guys, not only did they maintain their religiosity, but you saw them even improving and growing and becoming much more Israeli and learning all the Israeli songs. Our Kabbalat Shabbat is totally different now than it ever was before, because they're bringing in like the Israeli Yeshivat Hesder Ruach, and they're singing the songs that the boys sing in the army in their yeshivot. So the whole cultural change and shift was amazing. So we became Yeshivat Hesder. It was already 6 or 7 years that we were Yeshivat Hesder, and it's amazing. I even say that we're the most represented Yeshivat Hesder in Tzahal. Why do I say that? I mean, they're bigger Yeshivat Hesder than Lev Hatorah. We have 30 guys each year doing the army, and you can't put 30 guys in one unit. 30 lone soldiers, it would be a comedy of errors. It would be wonderful to see. It would be great for a movie, but not for reality. So they split them up. 3 to 4 guys go to every unit. So we have guys in Sanchanim, in Golani, in Givati, in Nachal. We have in Netzach Yehuda, in Kfir, in Shirion, in Hadassah Kravi, all the different units. So wherever I go, any yeshiva I go to, we know guys from Lev Hatorah. So it was a real game changer, becoming recognized as Yeshivat Hesder. But this was not the intention all along. People ask me, when you first started, is this what what you had in mind? So I said no, because it's the Lev Hatorah is not just the result of my thoughts and my moves. We have a whole staff of over 30 Rebbeim who all together, each one invested themselves in the institution. So I think that's what Lev Hatorah has become. It's become the result of all these Rebbeim together.
So on the idea of, you mentioned before, one of the unique things about Lev Hatorah when you originally had the idea was, let's make yeshiva with the different Rebbeim within the community around the yeshiva. And I'm very curious to hear how the whole community of Ramat Shiloh fit in with the idea of Lev Hatorah, and take me a little through that process a little bit more and kind of what's become today.
Okay, so my experience at BMT, when I was a Talmud and then a Madrich and then a Rebbe, I lived on campus, and the Rebbeim that lived on campus had a much stronger connection to the students than any other Rebbe. Because they were there for Shabbases, every Mariv, every Shacharis, every Mincha. You're there all the time. So we had at the time, whether it was Rabbi Ryan, whether it was Rav Shammai Warman, myself, other Rebbeim, there were certain guys from Kollel, Rav Benji Kwalwasser, who ultimately, worked with me to open the yeshiva. So he was in the Kollel in Grus, and he's part-time Rebbeim. So everybody that was a Rebbe that lived on campus was just made such a bigger impact on the students. And of course, Gadol Mikulam, Rav Benny Eisner, who lived on Lev Shalom, who was a personal Rebbe to me, very, very dear and close Rebbe, who I learned so much from. And so his love for the Talmidim was parallel to none. And so we said, we're going to duplicate that model. In fact, we're not going to duplicate it. We're going to build on it. Not have just some of the Rebbeim live on campus, have all of the Rebbeim live right next to the yeshiva. So where we're going to do it? So the popular place back then that everyone was buying homes was Ramat Shemesh. Everybody's buying in Ramat Shemesh. It's a new affordable place. So we said, okay, we'll build it in Ramat Shemesh. And I will say this, I have tremendous hakaras hatov to Reshit. Because Reshit opened up in Beit Shemesh. Back then, it was like everyone was looking at Reshit. Are they going to be able to make that switch from Yerushalayim to Beit Shemesh? And they did so with grace, amazingely. Of course, having a building that looks like the Beis HaMikdash, definitely helped their cause. It's the Moroccans in Beit Shemesh called Reshit, like the Beit HaMikdash of Beit Shemesh. But it was an amazing move that the rabbis Marcus did, and it opened up Ramat Beit Shemesh as a possibility for people to come for the year. So I have tremendous hakaras hatov to them, and opening up in Ramat Beit Shemesh was amazing because you had not just the Rebbeim, but all these incredible families who were not in chinuch, who could be tapped for a chug on Sunday nights or for Shabbos invitations or Rosh Hashanah meals. It was an amazing thing to open up in Ramat Beit Shemesh. Okay, that was the beginning. We opened up in a basement of a shul on Nachal Luz in Ramat Beit Shemesh. And within, we started off with 18 guys. The next year we had 32 guys. The next year 36, then 40. It was clear that we outgrew the space very, very quickly. So we're looking for a solution, a long-term solution. So I hired a man named Ephraim Naaman, who today is the menahel of the yeshiva, the administrator of the yeshiva. And I said, find us a place where we can build a community with the yeshiva in the center. So he went and he looked at, I like to say, it's not true. I like to say he looked at 32 places. And Lev, the 32nd place was the place that he found. It was around then. And he found this barren hill, which on one side of the hill was the Merkaz, where all the shopping center, with all the shopping and everything. The other side was a community which at the time was mostly non-religious. It was the last non-religious outpost in Ramat Beit Shemesh. They had one school that they would send their kids to. If you remember, I don't even know if you remember, that school doesn't exist anymore. And since then, most of the non-religious people from the community have already left, and it's more Masorti and some religious. So we went to the mayor at the time, Dani Vaknin. We said, listen, we want to build a community. And we see that this land is available and has not been yet developed. So he was very concerned. He was not a big Haredi lover, if I may say, and he was worried that the Merkaz, which was more Haredi in Hashkafa, would overflow into that community, and then ultimately the people in the older community would be threatened and want to leave. So I said, perfect, we're going to be the bridge. We are Dati Lumi. We bridge between the Dati and the Lumi. We bridge between the people who are nationalistic, but not necessarily religious, and the people who are religious and not necessarily nationalistic. We'll be the bridge. And he went for it, and we built, and that's how Ramat Shiloh was born. So we turned to all the Kablanim that won the different auctions, land auctions, and we said, we're going to build a community. We're going to do something called coopetition. It's cooperation and competition together. So we're going to build a community. We're going to market all of your products, all of your places. So even though you'll think, how can I market your building and market your competitor's building at the same time? No, we're going to do it because we're really all building one community together. And a number of the Kablanim, they agreed. We marketed the community, and that's how Ramat Shiloh was born. The first people that bought were myself and Rabbi Fass. Rabbi Fass, the head of Nefesh B'Nefesh, so he's a dear friend and a neighbor, and also a Rebbe at Yeshivat Lev Hatorah. So we bought the first 2 homes, and then afterwards, like 10 Rebbeim bought, and many other people who are hashkafically like-minded, bought as well. So that's how Ramat Shiloh was born.
During the whole process of from start to finish of just reaching out to different people that were the developers and so on and so forth, did you have any, whether it's interesting stories of whether it was like a crazy thing that happened that you're like, okay, we can't do this, or were you always so optimistic? Like, did you ever have kind of bumps in the road?
Those who know me know that I am optimistic to a flaw. So I never had a doubt for a moment. Never for a moment. There were others that had doubts. Others had doubts that the yeshiva building would be ready in time for our move. And I buckled to their pressure, and we rented the yeshiva space that we were at for another year for fear maybe we wouldn't be able to get into that building right away. But I never had any doubts. The idea was too good to be true. We had this, so we were granted the land for the yeshiva, which is 5.5 dunam of land, which is a wonderful space to build a campus. And on the land, we built shuls. Well, we didn't build them, but we had shuls allocated for the community as well. So it was a really perfect setup. The model worked, and people were very excited. And people were looking to expand their homes. A lot of people who bought were young couples in Ramat Beit Shemesh, and already 5-6 years into it, they were looking to expand their homes, build bigger homes, and they were offering in Ramat Shiloh beautiful homes. By the way, Ramat Shiloh, I don't know if you know, but Shiloh stands for Shchunat Yeshivat Lev Hatorah. That's why it was called Ramat Shiloh. We wanted to brand it as a place which would be the yeshiva community. So we called it Shchunat Yeshivat Lev Hatorah. And it was amazing. It was amazing. There were, in the very, very, very beginning of the marketing, it takes time till something takes off. So we offered the Rebbeim a discount in buying the homes. This was settled together with the Kabbalan. It wasn't our discount. It was the Kabbalan's discount. And that got things started. There was one Kabbalan who was very, very upset at someone in the yeshiva because they were supposed to build 3 tall towers in their area, and that Kabbalan, someone from the yeshiva, tried to ask Beit Shemesh to reject their plans to change those towers to regular quads, to regular homes, and they were very upset. So they didn't want us to market their project. And for a year, they wouldn't let us touch their project. But for a year, they didn't sell even one apartment. So finally, they buckled in and they said, "Okay, you could sell our apartments." And within a few months, most of them were sold. It was amazing. So yeah, so that was the background of the community.
That's amazing. So I kind of want to channel the conversation a little bit, still related on the topic of Lev Hatorah, but what's going on in Eretz Yisrael right now is something that has not happened in a while. And since you started the yeshiva, I don't think you probably had something of this, caliber, unfortunately happen. What has it been like being the head of Lev Hatorah with so many alumni in the army since the war broke out on October 7th?
This has been the heaviest period of my life. Besides having my own son who's in the army, we have approximately 200 chayalim that are connected to Lev Hatorah in the army, between the active soldiers, which there are over 30 of them, and the Rebbeim, which there are 5 of them, and Kolel, which is about 8 or 9 of them, and dozens and dozens of alumni, plus children of Rebbeim that are in the army. It's very, very, very heavy time and a very difficult time for Am Yisrael. At the same time, it's very inspirational. You see these boys, and they are inspired to fight evil. They're inspired to do a Kadosh Baruch Hu's work, to be the representatives of Hashem in the world. And it's not simple, but when you go to visit them on the bases, it's Rav Daniel Hartstein, so he teaches the Yeshiva. His son, in the very beginning of the war, he was up north, so he went up north to visit his son, Erev Shabbos, and he went to a few bases, and he said he didn't understand. He says, it feels like Yom Ha'atzmaut. Wherever you go, it feels like Yom Ha'atzmaut. All the flags and the ruach and the spirit. Are we in a war? Like, what's going on here? So the soldiers are very inspired. They're very pumped up. They're ready to give everything, just for the sake of Klal Yisrael, for the protection of Am Yisrael. So it's a very inspiring time, but it's very heavy to have soldiers, to have so many. We had 2 boys who were in Lev LaChayal last year and started the year off in YU. One of them was in Rav Shechter's shir the day after he found out of the war, the day after Shabbos. So he booked a flight and he came back to serve with his unit. These 2 were in Seyeret Givati. They were amongst the very first soldiers that went into Gaza. One of them was engaged to be married, and he came anyway. Ultimately, he went back for his wedding, and both of them left their unit right before this. One of them got married, and very sadly, like right the day after they left the unit, their unit in Gaza went into a booby-trapped home, and many of them lost their lives, and some of them lost their limbs. And these are boys that they volunteered. They didn't have to come, but they said, how could we let our unit go in and us not join them? So they're back in YU right now, but But it was very, very inspirational to see the amount of motivation. So many guys came in from Chutz La'aretz to join the army. Many people who, our guys did machal. They weren't Israeli citizens when they did the army. So many of them are not assigned to a miluim unit, and yet they volunteered and they wanted to join the fight. So it's very, very inspirational to see these boys who are so ideological, who are so motivated to be with their comrades in arms. It's just an incredible time. But again, very, very heavy. Also hit the base measures very hard because we lost most of our kollel. It's our kollel. It's not like a foreign kollel. And our rebbeim, many of them were called up. So the Shir Dalid, we had close to 20 guys in Shir Dalid. Most of them were called up. So 7 of them madrichim. 7 of them we lost all of our madrichim to the war. And now, Baruch Hashem, they're coming back. Only 2 of them are still left. Everyone else has come back to the base medrash. But it's been a very challenging year, and a very heavy year, and a very difficult year, but a very inspiring year.
So I'm very curious to hear your perspective on this. That, as I mentioned to you before we're on this episode, I come to Lev Hatorah every single week to have a charusa, shout out to Adir, and I see all these kids that come from American backgrounds, whether it's Boston, New York, LA, and whatnot. And a lot of these kids choose, as we discussed, to go and take the path of the army. From doing this for all the years that you have, what would you say are some of the common, whether it's struggles or things that kids from these really American backgrounds have to overcome in order to be able to really integrate and get into the army world?
The first challenge, which is common for everyone, is the language. And that's something that they cannot overcome before they do the army. And no matter how hard they try, no matter how many verbs they conjugate, they're not going to, how many Roshei Tevot of the army they learned beforehand, they come into the army and it's like a deer in the headlights. It's like, what in the world is going on here? And so it takes some time to acculturate to the army. That's the common challenge for all of them. You have 1 or 2 guys who come from Israeli homes. Their parents are Israeli, so they know a little bit more slang, a little bit more Hebrew, but Rubam Kikulam, it's very, very, very difficult to acculturate to the army. It's a whole new world. The second thing is being American and, being in an army misgeret. That framework is one that they're in charge of every second of your day. And it's very humbling. And especially for a kid that comes from an affluent home, to be told what to do all the time. It's very, very difficult for them. It's very humbling. And it really builds their character. Because they're not used to it. These are kids that, they come to yeshiva for the year, they go to minyan or they don't go to minyan in the morning. It's hard for them to get up in the morning because they're spoiled and they're used to being pampered. And then they come to the army and you got a new mother and father. That's the army. This drill sergeant is going to work you very hard. But it really, really builds character. I think if they were doing it on their own, a lot of them would break. But the fact that they do it together with their friends, so there's strength in numbers, and then they come back to the yeshiva, and we have rebbeim who visit them on the bases, and they have Shabbos together. They have a special kiddush for all the chayalim every Shabbat, and they have every 15 guys have an avanem bayit that take care of them, that speak to them. There's a psychologist assigned to the chayalim that anytime they need, they could just call up the psychologist, who's also a boger of the yeshiva. So they have a real support system, but the challenges are real. It is not easy culturally. It is not easy physically, and most of all, it is very difficult for them mentally. Very, very difficult. But they overcome and they become much stronger for it.
So staying on the topic of your students that choose to go to the army and having a lot of American students here in your yeshiva, what would you say? I'm very curious to hear your perspective on the American upbringing of youth, understanding the hashkafas that they have, how they come to Eretz Yisrael, and then when they end up leaving, having some kids go this path and this path. What's your take, I guess you could say, on the way American Jewry, in the modern Orthodox world specifically, are raising their children?
It's very natural. America is a very materialistic country, and the most natural thing in the world is for people growing up in America to be materialistic. When a kid does the army in Israel, he's basically saying, for the next year and a half of my life, I'm giving up all of my materialism. That's a very, very big thing to give up. Someone once asked a big Rav, he says, why was it necessary to have Moshe and Aaron to take Am Yisrael out of Mitzrayim? It would have been enough just to have one of them. Why do you need 2 Go'alim? So he thought to himself, he says, Truth is, in the future, we're going to have a Mashiach ben Yosef and a Mashiach ben David. Why do you need two Mashiachim? So he says, one is to take the Jews out of Mitzrayim, and the other one to take the Mitzrayim out of the Jews. It's not easy to take the Golas out of the Jew. Even you see many people make Aliyah, and they're still living an American life while they're living in Israel. It's very, very hard to separate from our culture. How many people have been here for decades and still watch the Super Bowl? It's a part of your life. So it's a big challenge. You see in America Jewry going in polar directions. The modern are getting more modern, and the frum are getting frummer. And the middle, which is a very common phenomenon in Israel, the Dati Lumi is growing and growing. In America, the modern Orthodox, which is not the same thing as Dati Lumi, is shrinking, or it's at least not growing. It's not growing. And that's because you're pulled. You have your Ruchnius, you have your Gashmius, and you have to choose. You have to choose between one. To link those together is very hard. Eretz Yisrael is a land where it's the most natural thing in the world that the Gashmi and the Ruchani are all one. Rav Kook was known, like there's the Kodesh and Chol, and there's Kodesh Kodashim. Kodesh is Kodesh, Chol is Chol. When you combine the two, that's Kodesh Kodashim. That's the highest level you can possibly reach, when you're able to be Mekadesh the Chol. In Chutz La'aretz, it's very hard to be Mekadesh the Chol. My Rebbe, Rav David Miller, so he said, what's the difference between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz? Chol HaMoed. In Eretz Yisrael, Chol HaMoed is more of a Moed than Chol. In Chutz La'aretz, Chol HaMoed is more Chol than Moed. It's very hard to have that in between, to have that, I'm religious and I'm part of the physical, the material world. I'm combining them together. It's a very difficult task. So I think that's the biggest challenge is synthesizing the two important worlds into one entity. I think it's very hard. Chutz La'aretz is about two, and Eretz Yisrael is all about one. It's about the union, the achdus of a Kodesh Baruch Hu.
Wow, that's amazing. Staying on the topic of kids that come into your yeshiva, in an honest way, I'm very curious to hear your opinion. When you see a kid that comes into the doors of Lev Hatorah, do you envision in your mind, like, this kid coming out this specific way would be a successful kid in my mind?
So it's a great question. The way you phrased it was great. This kid coming out in this specific way. For sure, Chanoch L'Nal Pi Darko is the way of Lev Hatorah. Every single person has a very special, to paraphrase Rav Kook, every single person has a candle that's lit within him. And his job is to reveal that light to the world and to make it into a grand fire and to influence the entire world. So that's our goal, to find the spark, to find the fire, to find the inspiration, to find the genius of every single guy, and to help him develop it, bring it out, and then share it with the world. So that's the goal of Lev Hatorah for every single one of the Talmidim. Do we see it in every single individual? Do we try to guide them in the way that's right for them? Yes. To that goal, we have over 30 Rebbeim, each one of them very different. It's not a cookie-cutter place at all, so that every person can find his derech and avodas Hashem. You don't always see it when they first come in. I think that's the goal of Machanech. The goal of Machanech is to see that light inside and bring it out. Instead of seeing the darkness, to look for the light. Can I share a story?
Absolutely. Podcasts are meant for stories.
Okay, so this is... So when Rav Miller, I mentioned before that Rav Miller offered me a job as a Rebbe in Lev Hatorah. Many years later, he shared with me that every time that he would offer a job to a mechanech, he'd first call him into his office. You're in Shraga, you know the office I'm talking about. And on the wall of that office, there's a picture of Har HaZeisim. And Har HaZeisim is a close-up of a kever. And he asks the person that he's interviewing to look at the picture. Tell me, what do you see? So he asked me what I saw. So I say, it's like Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. I say, I see the light. It's, and so then he offered me the job. He said, whenever I hire someone, if they say I see a kever, I don't hire them. If they say I see Tchias HaMeitim, because the picture is one that you see the light shining off the kever, or I see the light or something, then I know that he's a person that's roi to be machanech. Because when you look at your talmidim, if you don't see the light inside of them, if you don't see that potential, so then you can't be a machanech. Only someone who sees the light is someone who will be able to bring out that light in his talmidim. So those are the type of I don't do the Rav Miller test when I hire somebody, but I guess in a certain sense that's what I'm looking for. A machanech that could really believe in his talmidim, could really see the potential in his Talmidim and bring it out of them every single day.
So is there ever a point where, I'll say it like this, do you give up on a kid, or you have a kid that you work very, very hard on, you have chavrusas with him, you try to get the kid to change his habits, whatever it may be. After months and months and months of seeing a kid not necessarily progressing, is there ever a point where you're like, okay, like you kind of give up on the kid?
You can never, ever give up on a Talmud. Every single Talmud has a neshama, chelek elukah mimal. He has a godliness in him, and it's our responsibility to bring that out. If he's failing, we have to bear some of the brunt of that responsibility because our job is to inspire him. Now, there could be a time where a student needs to leave the yeshiva because of other factors, because he's bringing other people down, because he passes, a red line in the yeshiva, and for the sake of the Mizger of the yeshiva, so it's important that he not stay. But that doesn't mean we give up on him. I'm even in touch with some Talmidim that we ask to leave the yeshiva, and we follow up and we see how they're doing, because once a Talmud owes a Talmud, sometimes even Talmidim leave not on the worst terms. They understand that the Mizgeret wasn't right for them. So there are Talmidim. I'm thinking of one specifically that I went out of my way to meet with one time. I won't say where, but and we enjoy a very good relationship until today, even though the Mizgeret of the yeshiva was not exactly right for him.
So I find it very, very interesting to hear your very dedicated hashkafic perspective on Talmidim and everything that you've kind of discussed with me up until now. Was there a specific person that was your role model for all these years of doing what you've done that you want to kind of emulate a little bit of?
I have many. There are many people in my life who had profound influences on my life. The number one is certainly Rav David Miller, my Rebbe, who truly gave over emes of Torah, gave over the hashkafa of Torah, but the neshama of Torah. And it's not only about Talmud Torah tzrufa, as Rav Lichtenstein would say, but it's about translating that Torah to life. And Rav Miller did it in such a natural, and does it in such a natural way. His midos are something that everyone can learn from. His ability to take complex situations and break them down to the most simple components and see clarity in a very unclear world is so profound and is so inspiring. And it's something that many times, I remember calling Rav Miller once and telling him, I feel bad, but I've had so many conversations with you that you don't know about. It's because whenever I have a situation, I think, what would Rav Miller say about this situation? And I go into the mind of the endless conversations that I've had with him, and I come out with a result which I think is his, and I say, I hope I didn't misrepresent you in my thought process. Rav Miller is certainly someone that was inspired and continues to inspire me till today. His Talmidim are so vastly different from each other, and yet each one of them consider him his Rebbe, almost like Rav Soloveitchik, but with Rav Miller, there's a certain neshama there that just stays with you forever. Another one is Rav Benny Eisner. Rav Benny Eisner, my dedication, my commitment, my appreciation, and the depth of my connection to Eretz Yisrael is something that I learned, Gadol Shimushaya Temeli Muda at his house. He was, not just a Rebbe, but a person who was a friend, was someone who you felt so close to. There was no distance, as they say in Hebrew, distance. There's no distance between you and your Rebbe. It was so inspiring, such an inspiring person who his love for Eretz Yisrael was only defeated by his love for every single Jew. He loved every single Jew so much, and you felt it. So these two role models, I think, were two of the people, both of them on the BMT campus, both of them that I spent many years with and continue the relationships with until this very day.
Wow, that's amazing. On that topic and kind of taking everything that we've discussed, and I'm sure there's so much more that we haven't discussed, looking back over the past 20, 30, and 40 years of your life and everything that you've went through, and specifically I want to highlight the last 20 years of starting the yeshiva and making it what it is today. Would you do anything differently looking back through that whole process? And if so, what would that be?
Wow. Okay. That's a great question. That's a great question. And I would probably have to sit for many, many days to give a proper answer to that. Would I do anything differently? I'm very happy with what we did do. I'm very happy with the staff that I hired. I'm very happy with the siyata d'shmaya that we had to build a community, to build a building, and now we're building a midrashah for girls as well. I'm very happy with the lot that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me, and I don't regret anything looking back. I'm sure there are nuances, what I could have done better and differently. I think the one thing that I still struggle with till today, which maybe I would do differently, is it's very hard to be an administrator and to maintain the high level of connection with the Talmidim. 2 years ago, I taught a morning shiur. It was the first time in many years that I taught a morning shiur, and it was the best move that I ever did. And it was also the worst move I ever did. So it was the best move because I finally had the connection, the strong, deep personal connection with every single Talmud. And that spilled over to other Talmidim as well. But on the other hand, running the yeshiva, it's very, very hard on a day-to-day basis to give morning shiur every single day and to also run a yeshiva with so many moving parts. So I think if I look back, that's probably the only thing I would try to figure out. How can I run this better or autopilot it as much as I can and be much more involved with the day-to-day chinuch of the Talmidim?
So on the topic of running a yeshiva, I think this is something that's probably very hidden to most people, especially if a kid even walks in the door of the yeshiva, they don't realize how many moving pieces there are to the yeshiva. But if you give a little bit of a glimpse, if we're able to look into that whole a little bit of what your job entails, of kind of what you have to go through, of all the things related to the yeshiva, balancing your family with a busy schedule and everything, like what does that look like for you?
So running yeshiva is planning ahead, and it's putting out fires, and it's doing the day-to-day work. There are many heads in Lev Hatorah. So we have a head of the Kollel, a head of the Shir Daled, a head of the Shana Bet program, and within it a head of the Lev LaChayal program. We have the head of a Shana Aleph program. We have the head of Tiulim. We have many, many different heads. We have one person in charge of the psychology in the yeshiva, the mental health of the yeshiva. We have one in charge of the dorms, the mashgiach. We have a lot of moving parts. Beyond that, there are always communal needs that come up. So there are set meetings that happen all the time administratively, but then there are the meetings that come up as a reaction to what's going on. And sometimes we have to change gears in the middle. So it's always meeting with people. It's having a chabur with guys. It's subbing for a Rebbe that doesn't come in. There are a lot of things that come up. I think there's more different than the same, if that makes sense. There's less things that are by rote and more things that are dynamic. That's probably more my personality also, to be more dynamic than pre-planned. But there also are the day-to-day needs of the physical yeshiva. We have to, if there's Ein Kemach Ein Torah. So there's fundraising. There's also the building of the yeshiva. We're constantly building and growing and expanding the physical. So decisions need to be made, and I have a very specific taste. And I work very closely with the architects and with the engineers and with the person who's overseeing the building. And then within the building, the decisions, I know it's silly, but the decisions of what type of sinks do we have and what color are the walls, everything that for me, every single nuance is important. And maybe I focus too much on that sometimes, but it's important. The only area I don't deal with at all is the food. I have nothing to do with the food yeshiva.
So looking, I mean, we've discussed over the past 45 minutes a lot about the past 20 years of the yeshiva and kind of touching on how you're so involved in the process of everything that's building of the yeshiva. And you said a few minutes ago about Midreshet Lev that is starting next year, Be'ezrat Hashem. What's your vision for the next 10 or 15 or 20 years of Lev Hatorah, Midreshet Lev, and kind of any new things you have in the making?
I think that running an institution is like playing a game of chess. That you have to put your pieces in the right places. You have a plan, but you have to be ready to change your plan based on the reality outside of you. So I do have a plan for Lev Hatorah, and I'll share it. And I think that it will happen. I think that we're in a very, very unique time of the Jewish people. And every decision that I make, I keep in mind the frame of where we are right now. We're at a time that already big Rabbanim in America are saying to their Talmidim, to their members of shul, that it's time to make Aliyah. It's time to come home. The writing is on the wall. Rav Twersky from YU recently made a statement how he told his Talmidim, it's just a matter of time now. American Jewry needs to come to Eretz Yisrael, and if you have an opportunity, go now. I've spoken to many potential Rebbeim of the Yeshiva who live in America now who are looking to make Aliyah. I think that we're in a stage, and we could decide to, be observers of the redemption process that is unfolding before our very eyes, or we could be a part of it. And so I choose to be a part of it. The whole building of Lev LaChayal is being a part of it. It's allowing young men a framework that will allow them to transition in the most natural and healthy way to Israeli society and build their lives here in Eretz Yisrael. With that in mind, Midreshet Lev, Bezrat Hashem, will have a program for Benot Sherut Bodedot, lone Benot Sherut, who will be able to also do the same, to transition into a life here in Eretz Yisrael by going to go through the prism of Sherut Lumi, and seeing Israeli society through those eyes, and being acculturate themselves, not just the language but the culture of the land of Israel, and build their homes here. And more we see more and more people staying, doing university in Eretz Yisrael, and we will see much more. This will not just increase, arithmetic. What do they say? But geometrically, but exponentially, it will increase. We're going to see the numbers grow. We're going to see more and more people stay, and we need to create frameworks for those people that are coming to Eretz Yisrael. So what would not have been a possibility 20 years ago, we could not have created a Lev LaChayal 20 years ago. That was not ripe in Jewish history for that. Right now, you're going to see that the numbers of guys doing the army, of joining Lev LaChayal, are going to grow from year to year. The Benot Sherut program will take off right away. I see it very, very clearly. And then the question is, the sky's the limit. We have a Yeshivat Hesder, which culturally makes sense for people coming from American or Anglo countries. I envision that we're going to have a program one day for Israeli Americans, for those that want to do Hesder, but the current Hesder programs are not exactly fit for them. And we will evolve, and we will wind up becoming more Israeli as well. Our Shir Dalet and Shir Hey and Kola will grow. The upper elements of the yeshiva are going to grow. That's going to bring in a stronger Shir Aleph and a stronger Shir Bet, and we'll bring in more from here, from Eretz Yisrael. That's my vision for the future, Bezrat Hashem. Outside of that, one of my passions is building communities. I was zocha to have a major role in building the Ramat Shiloh community. Since then, we had our hand in selling with Rav Judah Michel. We sold in the Mishkafayim many units. We were planning to do something there. In the end, we didn't, because we didn't get any land there, and our plan didn't happen. But we are planning in Neve Shamir to build a community of Bezrat Hashem here. The Lev Shamir community with Bezrat Hashem will be built, and that will revolve around the Midrashah. So that's that. And then we have hundreds of alumni living here in Eretz Yisrael now. Hundreds. So to build communities for them and for people like them, there's a need for healthy communities in Eretz Yisrael. The American model of community is starting to catch on here in Israel, where you have a Rav of a Kehila, and life revolves around that Kehila. That's happening more and more. And I think we're going to see much more of that. So to create those communities that people can build wonderful and healthy lives, I think that's the next frontier, Bezrat Hashem.
So I think it's amazing what you've done, and Bezrat Hashem, what you plan on doing. From your perspective, looking back at everything that you've done, what are you most proud of for everything that you were able to help create today?
That's hard. It's like asking a parent, okay, you have 5 children. Who are you most proud of? It's very hard to choose one over the other.
You can say all 5 if you want.
Sometimes I wake up in the morning and I say, not sometimes, many times, what did I do to deserve to have this incredible yeshiva that's putting out and producing so many incredible alumni, Talmidim, who are really affecting the world. So certainly the yeshiva is the crown jewel. But then sometimes I'm walking on Shabbos afternoon in my community, and I see 200 kids from Ezra in the park. Ezra is a youth group. It's like B'nai Akiva or Ariel, Ezra. So we have Ezra, and I say, my gosh, what a healthy community. What an incredible thing. And so many people tell me that they want to move to Ramat Shiloh, but they can't because there's nothing available. And the community, the people there, many of them have said that when Mashiach comes, he's going to first stop at Ramat Shiloh. We have so many different types of people living in Ramat Shiloh. We have the major component is the Dati Leumi community there, most of them being Olim, but many of them are Israelis as well. There's Sephardim, they're Ashkenazim, they're Yeshivish, they're Hasidish people living in the community. And everybody gets along. And it's a model where the Rabbanim get together and they discuss what's good for the community. We did this in the early years of Ramat Shiloh. And we had a Hesder organization called Chasdei Shiloh that provides for the needy of all the communities. So all the rabbis are speaking to their members of their community to raise money to help the aniyim of all the communities together. So it's just a special, amazing community. I'm like, what's greater, the community or the yeshiva? I don't know. What's greater, the fact that you have hundreds of people who have built their homes here in Eretz Yisrael, and I look around the country from the north to the south, and you see these incredible families raising their children here in Eretz Yisrael. It's an amazing thing. On the other hand, I go to America, and I see the incredible alumni there. And there are wonderful, incredible, inspiring alumni who are leaders of their communities. Some of them have built shuls or are presidents of their shuls. Others have become big philanthropists. Others, mechanchim, the rebbeim in yeshivas or communities. It's incredible. So I look. I don't know. Is it the institution? Is it what the institutions produce? Is it the community? I don't know. I'm equally proud of all of them and trying to, Bezrat Hashem, continue to invest in each and every one of the initiatives that we've started. I also want to add, it's not just me. I mean, Rav Benji Kwalwasser was a partner of mine to build the yeshiva. He has an incredible impact on the alumni, on the LaChayal program. Rav Dudi Winkler, who runs the LaChayal program, has been doing miracles, really miracles. Has done things unprecedented until now. And the Rebbeim in the yeshiva, Rav Natan Leibowitz, who was a mashgiach in the yeshiva and head of our program for 21 years, his connection to the Talmidim, to the alumni, continues till today. I mean, the amount of couples that he's spoken to help them through difficult times. The yeshiva has produced so many Rebbeim who have such a profound impact. And just what they've been able to do for Klal Yisrael is incredible. So to have a frame to raise a generation of Rebbeim who are so impactful and so inspirational has also been a great zchus. So there's just so many different areas. I couldn't really pick one and say this is one over the other. Super valid, by the way, and totally okay. I kind of want to end off with one question to phrase to you like this, that through all the years of having so many Talmidim and interacting with so many people through the process of building up everything that you've done, if there was called a message in a bottle that you said, take this message and I'm going to give it to you for the rest of your life about anything specifically for your alumni, what would that be for them? I was speaking to Rav Judy and Michelle about this once, and we both agreed that we have this secret that, like, it's not really a secret, but no one seems to know it. There is nothing in your life you cannot accomplish. You just have to believe in yourself. And as Rav Miller told me many years ago, if you put Mesiras Nefesh into something, you'll see Siyata Dishmaya. That's the message. Anything you want to accomplish in life, you can do. Any single thing. You just need to be Moser Nefesh, and you will see the Siyata Dishmaya. Wow, that was pretty simple and pretty self-explanatory. I think we've kind of hit our mark in terms of the topics that I want to discuss and also our time. And as I started off this episode with Hakaras Hatov, I just want to thank you again for taking the time. I know you're super, super busy, and as people have realized through this episode, you have a lot going on, Baruch Hashem. So just thank you again so much for taking the time to sit down and have this conversation with me, and looking forward to hopefully doing this again soon. Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much for opening up your home. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu give you Siyata Dishmaya to be able to accomplish all the things that you want to accomplish in your life. Amen. Thank you so much. That is a wrap of today's episode and conversation with Rav Boaz Mori. I just want to say, after I shut the cameras off from the episode, Rav Boaz and I hung out for a while and got to speak about so many other topics, and I have so much more respect for him after sitting down and hearing what he's been able to accomplish up until this point in his life, and God willing, to see what he's going to do in the future, being the visionary that he is. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and if you liked what you watched or saw or listened to, whatever platform you're on right now, feel free to give us a like
comment, subscribe, and I hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys in the next episode.